morning, church. This is a reading from the Gospel according to Mark. Jesus and his disciples went on from there and passed through Galilee. He did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The Son of Man is to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him, and 3 days after being killed he will rise again." But they did not understand what he was saying and were afraid to ask him. Then they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But they were silent, for on the way they had argued with one another who was the greatest. He sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all." Then he took a little child and put it among them, and taking it in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." John said to him, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him, because he was not following us." But Jesus said, "Do not stop him, for no one who does a deed of power in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us. For truly I tell you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you bear the name of Christ will by no means lose the reward." I think this passage has a lot to say to me, especially now, and all the time, but I've been, in the last week, thinking of my own selfishness more than anything, mainly because as everything gets locked down and I'm working from home and my movements are being restricted and being at home with my family more than I normally would be. And we're kind of, on top of each other in our small house. I start to get a little selfish, and I start to think about how my needs aren't being met and how people should think of me before they think of themselves. And maybe I don't think of it that way, but that's really how I can go about things. And of course, this passage is pretty famous because of its teaching that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. And it does, of course, teach me that I should be thinking of others before I think of myself, that I should be the servant of all rather than seeking to be served. But I think the passage also illustrates how I can't do that in my own power. So it starts with Jesus telling his disciples about what's going to happen to him, that he's going to be killed and that he's going to rise, but they did not understand. And it seems that instead of paying attention to him and understanding what he was trying to say, they were more concerned about arguing about who should be served among themselves and who should serve. They were more interested in what they had to say than what he had to say. And even later in the passage, they were interested in preserving their own kingdom. They saw themselves as people who were given power and authority to cast out demons, and they saw other people who were also trying to cast out demons, but because they weren't in the tribe of the disciples and with Jesus, then the disciples saw them as people that needed to be stopped. But what that illustrates to me is that in my own power, in my own selfish thinking and actions, I really am powerless And it's really being connected to Jesus that gives me power. These people who were casting out demons, they were they were for Jesus. They weren't necessarily among the disciples, but but being connected to Jesus is how we have the power to act and follow Jesus. And listening to Jesus, listening to what he has to say to us, talking to him. These are ways for me to stop thinking about myself and acting for myself and thinking about how to act like a servant, because that's what Jesus did. I mean, he says it right here that he went to be betrayed, to be killed, and he does that for us. He does that for me. He didn't do it to make himself bigger, though in fact he became bigger. God glorified him on the cross. But and he did become first by being last, and that's a good thing for me to think about as I think about myself and how to get what I want. So let me just pray here for us. Dear Father, I thank you for your word. I thank you for this time when we consider these different situations in our lives that we're unfamiliar with. And I ask that you would help us see our life in a new light as you disrupt our routines and our schedules and our ways of doing things. And I ask that you would draw us to yourself, that you would show us that the way to live is to sit at your feet and listen to you, and from that, follow you. May we put aside our own selfish thoughts, our own ambitions, our desires to lead and to be served. But help us to see that the way to life is to follow you and to be servants, and help us to think about how to apply that in our families, where we often apply these things most of all, but especially now as we spend a lot more time together with our families, having cabin fever. And I just thank you for the ways that you are bringing us nearer to you in this time. And I ask these things in your name. Amen.